let's welcome everyone who has joined us so far. So I'd like to, first of all, welcome everyone who's here with us today. And as always, let me know in the chat where you're joining from, because we'd love to know where you're joining from. And I would like to welcome or thank Financial Sense and Kellie Parks for doing this joint webinar with me. It is called Making Your Workflows Work for You, Crafting Workflows that Create Efficiency and Joy in Your Day. And I would really love to hear about how you bring joy to your day, Kellie, and how we could all do that, because sometimes, working on workflows, and I know my experience when I was crafting all of my workflows was that it was painful, it was expensive and time consuming, but it paid off in the end. So as we look at the chat here, we see Tia from Chicago, Tina from Central Connecticut, Starlene from rural Maricopa, Arizona. Um, let's see, Victoria from Pittsburgh, Tatiana from Anchorage, Alaska, which must be nice and cool there. I imagine it's hot and humid here. Randall from San Antonio, from my neck of the woods here, and Makeda from Charlotte, North Carolina. So again, welcome. And I would like to just give you a couple of administrative announcements. So first of all, we're going to have Davida McBain in the background. She is with Financial Sense, and she will be answering some of your questions in the chat. You can use the chat to talk amongst yourselves. But if you have questions for Kellie, please put those questions in the Q&A. And what else do we have? We will send a recording out to everyone who registered for the webinar. And our presenter today is Kellie Parks, whom I have known, I would say, for several years, Kellie, I think. So awesome person in our accounting industry, a workflow wizard. So I'm excited to hear from you as well, Kellie. And whenever we're ready, I think we're probably ready to get started. Go ahead and take it away, Kellie.
Okay, sure. So, and I just want to say, well, thank you, Veronica, because I think I already said at the beginning of this, I admire the work that you've done. And I also think the world of you with what you create for workflows and processes, and also how you disseminate that information out so that other people can then move on to creating them as well. So, and yeah, and it's always nice. Veronica and I are both going to be at Scaling New Heights coming up in June. So I look forward to seeing her and hopefully some of you there in person along with Financial Sense. So today, making your workflows work for you. Yes, crafting workflows that create efficiency and joy in your day. So today, we are going to make your workflows work for you, bringing joy into your workday. I'm Kellie Parks. I'm a certified professional bookkeeper up here in Canada. I also am a US ProAdvisor, so I work in QuickBooks files in the US as well. I own Comwaters Cloud Accounting, and that is a bookkeeping firm based up here in Canada. I am a member of the International Trainer Writer Network. I know that that is gone in the States, but internationally it is still around for Intuit. And I'm certified or partnered in over a dozen cloud accounting and cloud business applications. I am the wife to one, the mother to three. I have 2 dogs and 100-year-old cabin. That's my life by the numbers. So today's agenda, always start with the end in mind. What is it that you are trying to achieve in your workflows will make it clearer to build them. If you know what the end run is, you can start to build around those. Create your workflows with the milestones first. What are the major things that you need to accomplish to get the work done? Don't complicate the process. Just get it pecked out and then take it from there. Add the elements as you go. So we're going to start with the milestones. We're going to start with the basic must-do tasks, and then we're going to add all the fun elements. And then let's talk about making a list of the lists that you need to create. I know that it can be really overwhelming to decide what you're going to create a workflow for. So why not create a list of the lists that you need to create? As we go along today, please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A. I want to make sure that as we progress, we are covering off some of the questions that you have. The other thing that I absolutely love is if I say something and you want to add more to it, I want this session to be all about everyone out there, not just me. So if I've said something and then you have another thought that is either a little counterintuitive to it, because everybody has a different way of doing it. So counterintuitive, or if you have a way of enhancing the thought that I have, I love the Q&A to also be discussional and suggestions as well. Okay, so let's start off with, I think somebody has a hand raised. Remember, you can put that straight into the Q&A and we will answer it from there. I don't want you to get stuck on starting. I have a saying, the hardest part of going for a run is putting on your shoes. And we can get stopped on the beginning. But that being said, that I don't want you to get stuck on starting, I also think it's important to build your checklist on your outcomes. I mentioned this in the agenda. What is it that you are trying to accomplish? Put that out there first, and then build your checklists based on your outcomes. Very often I just see people pecking out the list, and that's great. That's better than not pecking out a list. But I think it's really important to think about, why am I building this workflow? What's it going to do for me? What's it going to do for my team members? What's it going to do for my clients? And then start to build around that. Here's an example. This is the outcome of our onboarding workflow, is to bring a great fit client into, so first outcome, bring a great fit client into our firm as a pleasing first experience for them. Yet we still need to gather all of the documentation and information to begin working with them by a date that we have agreed upon. That's where everything starts for me on my onboarding workflow. My re-engagement workflow is to reinforce the good work we have done with our clients, to re-engage them at possibly a higher level, although sometimes I'm kind of lazy. If I can offload some of the work back onto their admin, I'm happy to reduce scope. And to make them feel like they are a part of their team. That's my re-engagement workflow outcome. So your outcomes are really going to start to drive your milestones. So let's take a look at my onboarding workflow milestones, because we just said it's to bring in a great fit client. So discovery is super important in that process. I need to know that the type of business that they have, I can bring value to their bookkeeping. So my discovery process is pretty tight. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of questions, but they have to fill out a form with me before we do anything. And that form asks some basic questions. It asks if they are incorporated business. I just mentioned to Veronica, I can only deal in incorporated businesses because that's who I think like. They have to be in QuickBooks Online. It's not that I don't love the other GL products. It's that I am small and I need to have tight processes for one thing. Otherwise, I would have too many bookkeeping processes. So I have settled on QuickBooks Online. So they must be in or willing to go into QuickBooks Online. Here's one that I got stumped on a few times. I did not ask about bank feeds. So I would get too far into an engagement and realize that they were not going to connect their bank feeds. That's a hard no for me. I need their bank feeds connected. That's an important part of my process. I can only bring value to them if I have timely information from their bank feeds. So I need to know if they are incorporated, QuickBooks Online. I need them to be professional services because I don't do inventory. And then I need their bank feeds connected. Those are the most important. Oh, and I like to know if they are tech savvy, if they are comfortable in cloud processes. for me, because I'm not really in the growth phase, that discovery form is yes, no questions. Will you connect your bank feeds? Yes, no. If you are in the building phase of your business, you may want to be more lenient and say, maybe I need more information on what the upsides and downsides of connecting bank feeds are. So mine are yes, no, but if part of your, so again, it's a little bit of your outcome. You want to grow your business, and you still want to have perfect fit clients, but maybe you're willing to do an education process in the discovery process. So a great fit client comes from the discovery form. File review. Veronica and I were talking about that. So I do a paid diagnostic. I wish everybody would do a paid diagnostic. I think there's great value in it. And I think it is a tell for whether somebody is going to want to pay you for your services well later on. But the file review, I'm still on that perfect fit client, because in a file review, I have discovered things that don't make it possible for me to do a good job for that particular client. So file review is the next part to making sure that I'm bringing in a great fit client. Oh, I guess it all starts with make sure that you know what your great fit client looks like. Not every one of my clients is like my ideal client, although they're all great. I love my clients, but some of them have a few little hiccups that maybe don't fit with what my new perfect client is. So even before your onboarding process, peck out a few things that are important to you for a client, because you won't know what your great fit client is for your discovery process until you have decided who you really want to work with. Okay, so quote and recurring payment setup. So this is a fairly simple part, but the recurring payment setup, I actually don't go on to information gathering if they have not set up some sort of recurring payment process with me. We're done, because again, I want to be able to work with the client when I say we're going to work with the client. So they accept the quote, we do the recurring payment setup, and then I do the information gathering. Only then, once we're set up, do I send out asking for incorporation documents. I already have access to their QuickBooks file. I don't really need that, but I need trial balance. I need some early bank statements. I need all of that information so that I know that who I'm working with is really who I'm working with. But here's the other thing. I need to know that this client is going to be able to be responsive in my technology and also to my processes. So the information gathering stage is really important to, again, hone that great fit part, because if they don't get you information when you are not even engaged, they're certainly not going to get it to you when you're married. So if they don't get through the information gathering stage, I don't do the engagement. So this is really for bookkeeping. I know for tax purposes, you have to do an engagement letter before you do any work. Fair enough. But if you're using something like Ignition or Go Proposal, the quote, payment, and engagement letter are all part of the same thing. If you need to do your engagement ahead of your information gathering, I highly recommend that you have a disengagement clause if they don't get things to you in a timely manner, or if, let's say that you have a process where you ask them to upload in a certain way, but then they just email it to you. And then you say to them, no, please put it through our client portal. And then they email it to you again, or they text it to you. So that's not going to work within your processes. Then make sure that you've got a way to get out of it. Or in my case, I do the engagement letter after we've gotten through that. Then there is app implementation, because I want my clients to be comfortable in our technology. So I am bringing them into the apps, or they're bringing me into their apps, whatever that may be. And then the last one is education. This is a session where we talk about how we are, they already know how we're going to share documents and communicate. Now we're going to educate on the technology if they need it. I like to have an education session on security. I do a security audit. I like to have an education session on outside apps that they may not have been using. And I like to have an education session on reporting, how to access reports. I don't send them. They go get them. How how to access their reports, but also more importantly, what those reports mean. I like to start off more on that higher level with them, if you will, of not just saying, here's your P&L. We have a session where we actually go over what the P&L means. So what does the bookkeeping workflow look like? There's the 7 miles of bookkeeping. So what I want to do is have clean, compliant books that give useful information to my clients in a timely manner. That's my outcome. So we need to collect and verify the receipts. We need to post the transactions. That is being done for us by, I personally use Dext. I have one client on HubDoc. That's actually posting, reading the receipts and posting them into QuickBooks. I want to clear the bank feeds to ensure that everything is matching and is nice and clean. And then we reconcile the accounts, including key balance sheet accounts. Then we do a file review. I do the manager review. So this is done by my team member. And then I would do a review. And then we would report. So I send out a note, and it does not have the reports with it, but it does have a report of the highlights, the lowlights, the various things that have gone on in my clients' books in that month, so that they have an overview of it, and will make the reports maybe a little bit more meaningful, or maybe I've noticed something that's a nuance that won't show up on a report. And then this is super important. I said that I want my clients' books to be clean and compliant. So we have a task. It is super important to me that we close the books with a password. Some clients need to be in their books if they've got estimates, or they're closing out purchase orders, whatever the case may be. So you may need to give them the password, but at least they know that they are making change in a past period. Some of them are going to be non-posting. So closing purchase orders or estimates, for example, would be non-closing tasks, non-posting tasks. But what happens is they will get a warning. Will get a warning, because I think every one of us, or I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I know almost all of my friends have made changes to past periods by mistake. And so clean, concise, compliant books do not include changes to past periods. So even though this doesn't seem like a milestone, I think I just harped enough right there that seems like it's a really important task to go into your list. I'm going to jump into the Q&A for a second. So I'm going to answer this live. So Richard Eberly, do you build out workflows and outcomes for each client, standardize the process for everyone? Okay, so this is really important. I basically a long time ago started with an overall workflow that looks like this, what I'm showing you right now, the 7 bookkeeping milestones. And then there was one for accounts payable. There was one for accounts receivable. There's a manager file review. And then what I did was I then created one for, at the time I had a couple of niches, and one of, let's just take restaurants. I did restaurants. And so then I took that template and I added in all of the extra things that you would need to do for restaurants, because there is lots of things that go on in that. And so then I took that process and I made a copy of it. And yes, then I made a very concise workflow template for each client. Doesn't sound scalable, but it is if you start off with a big one in the beginning. I don't do, so I call it bench style bookkeeping, where it is, you're just basically clear, not just, we all know it's not easy to clear the bank feeds, but where you're essentially, it's cash coding and then you're reconciling and then you're closing the books. I don't do those. So to me, it's really important that every client has, because every client also has a different outcome. So some of them may be looking to retire and sell. Some of them may be looking for financing. So yes, it very often becomes based on their outcomes as well. So thank you for the question, Rich. Laura Williams wants to know, is post-transactions categorized? Yeah, it's basically, categorizing or getting the transactions built into the GL. So could you explain, next question is, could you explain the access report process? You mentioned you do not send them reports. Yeah, so I create custom reports in QuickBooks Online. It's part of our education or app implementation in the onboarding process. We actually sit together and go through what kind of reports that they're going to need, what will be meaningful to them. And they are custom reports by groups within their QuickBooks Online file. I do realize that that takes a little bit of work, but once you do it once for them and you've made it easy for them to access it, you're no longer sending them. I will say all of my clients have access to their QuickBooks files. If your clients do not have that access, then you need to go back and look at what the process is going to be to get reports to people. But those are basically in QuickBooks Online. We customize them as part of the onboarding process. So then Tatiana wants to know, do you have engagement letters that Financial Sense can create? So Financial Sense does have e-signatures. So you could have standard engagement letters in Financial Sense that you gather the e-signatures from. Yes. I am not using that yet because I already had them set up somewhere else. So my engagement letters are coming out of another program. But you definitely could do that. Okay. In the 7 bookkeeping milestones, what are examples of highlights and lowlights? That's a really good question. So I would send them, a highlight would be that their revenue, and this is super simple, but a highlight would be that their revenue is up, or that their GP is up, or that they've gotten control of some cost of goods sold, if that's something that we talked about previously. A low light would possibly be that costs of goods sold are out of control. I'll give you an example. I had a restaurant where the cost of goods sold meat was out of control right away. Like, it was so obvious for us because that's a report that we run. We could see that something was wrong. I let my client know this low light, and the client right away tied it to a new hire. And then we realized they were stealing food. So that would be a low light, but that would have a happy outcome. I would also let them know, I use another product called Fin Daily, which sends an automated email that pulls data either from their bank accounts or from QBO directly. So I don't really need to do this anymore, but it lets them know their bank balances. Whereas previously, I would let them know that maybe they weren't going to be able to cover payroll. So that would be a low light that I want to get out ahead of. So that is some of the things, for example. So what is my policy for collecting receipts, and how do you handle clients who procrastinate? So that's an easy one. We use Dext. They upload their receipts into Dext. It is actually a task in Financial Sense to upload, and then it's got a custom upload button that opens Dext for them. So then I've taken away some of the friction on using an app. So Financial Sense sends them an automated task. It's got a custom upload button. They hit upload documents, and they are taken right away into Dext. And then the Dext, they upload them to Dext, and from there, Dext is OCR and publishing or posting over to QuickBooks Online. How do I handle clients who procrastinate? This is really going to come down to what works for you and what outcomes you want, because it's really annoying to have workflows that are open. So, and not to talk too much about Financial Sense, because I really want to talk about workflows, but Financial Sense has recats. So now we are changing our process that we will classify it, but we will classify it to sub accounts that then Financial Sense sends them notes that they can clarify what it is for. And so, but we do it a little differently than some people. I don't put it to a balance sheet. I actually want it to go to where it belongs, but as a sub account. So almost like a clearing account. So cost of goods sold would have a sub account, need details. And then that would be tied in, and then we would be asking from there. For me, it's not a big problem. I have clients that are fairly good at it, and I remind them in the monthly close that goes out, there is a note that thanks them for their prompt responses, for how well they have worked with us that month, whatever. I make sure that there's a little, hey, you're fabulous note in there. And so if they were procrastinating too long, and again, I don't mean to sound high horsey here, letting clients go is really, really, really hard. I happen to be in that happy space where I'm here. I'm not trajectorying. So if I had a client, I would probably give them a couple warnings, and then always, always, always the wording would be, I can't bring value to your business because I can't close your books in a timely manner because I'm not receiving things from you. So it would still be facing, I cannot bring value to your business. So I would probably let them go. And I don't mean that to sound high-handed. What I use to create an engagement letter. There are so many great things to create an engagement letter. So for me, personally, I am using 17 hats for my engagement letters. That's what is happening with those. There is, so Financial Sense has engagement letter templates. There is Ignition has them. Go Proposal has them. PandaDocs, another great option. I mean, we've got a lot of options out there right now for engagement letters. And software called FinDaily. So it is FINDAILY. You know what? I'm going to put this in here. It is FinDaily, and it sends an email with whatever information you want to pull out of QuickBooks Online. So it's a pretty sweet little system if you don't mind. It is not end-to-end encrypted, but it does have 2FA. So that's that. And then, so somebody says, you mentioned applications like Financial Sense. Do you have a recommendation for those starting out who may not have enough cash to fund all those apps? Yes, I do. We're going to get to that in 1 minute. I don't want people to underestimate the power of spreadsheets. You can start in them. And actually, I very, very often, it's almost like I planted that question, but I didn't. I still build a lot of checklists in spreadsheets because I don't need to think about it. I can just put the tasks in there. It's where I think. I find it easy, especially if it's going to be a really, like my remediation file. I built a remediation workflow. And as everybody knows, that can be a real hot mess, and it's got so many moving parts. So I built a spreadsheet that had a ton of tabs, and every time something new came up, I would add it to that spreadsheet until finally I thought parts of that were ready to go into Financial Sense. When I put it into Financial Sense, it was super simple. This is the same with most of the applications. You can copy the column, just copy a column and paste it right into a workflow app, and it should populate quite nicely. Then for the subtasks, you would have another column, and you would take those subtasks for each of the milestones, copy them, and put them right into the app. So starting off in spreadsheets can be kind of great. And actually, one of the things that I did while I was still working in spreadsheets before I moved on to workflow management apps was I would have the spreadsheets for each client of their work. So I had each client that I was going to do. I used Google Sheets, so you can actually add in check marks. I would have those lists, and then I would basically just duplicate them every month as I needed them. So it's, it's work, it's definitely work. But what I kept in addition to those was I kept what was almost like a Gantt chart. So I had all of my clients down one column, and then I had all of the milestones across the other one. So that I want to go back here. So I would have these 7 milestones across the top in a header row, and then I would have my client names down the side. This wasn't a workflow for client work. This was a workflow to track where I was with each particular client. Now, at the time, I think I had like 25 clients or something. It was hard. It was wrangling. If you only have a couple of clients, it's a super simple system. So I hope that answered your question on that. So yeah, whether you are already in an app or whether you are just starting out, please don't complicate your checklists in an app. So build out those milestones, put another column for the subtasks for each of those, and then maybe have another column for descriptions. Start there so that you are not getting lost in all of the greatness of the apps. Because I got to tell you, once you are in one of these apps and you realize all the automation that's in there, all of the, I call it aggregated. Apparently I can't even say it, so I don't call it that. Let's go with an easier word. Consolidated data, consolidated views, and all of it flows together. If you're using spreadsheets, they can work, but you have to go from one spreadsheet to another, perhaps from one folder to another to access them. This takes everything that you need to know about your client work and puts it in one place. But make sure that you have your processes at least started somewhere that you won't get overwhelmed by the app. By building them in a simple place and then moving them into an app, you have given your brain the space to think about what actually needs to be done. And then you can start to do all of the fun stuff in it. So I'm going to take a break for a second, go back to the Q&A. So, and I hope I'm saying this right, Yui, I mentioned using Excel to create the checklist. How do you manage the checklist and the detail how-tos or detailed descriptions so it does not become overwhelming? So I think I already kind of answered that. If you're going to use a spreadsheet, but this is actually becomes the same thing in an app, and that is you would have the milestones. So it would be in a spreadsheet, it would be one column. Then you would have the subtasks in Financial Sense, for example, that is listed underneath a task. You open it up and there are your subtasks. Then you would have another column for the details. In most of the apps, the details, the best practices, and the notes will be elements that are built right in. In a spreadsheet, you may want to have a new tab for them, or perhaps you want to have another column. Then one of the things that I love to use, and now my clients send them back to me, but I also like to use videos. So I have links to the videos, both in the resource center and within a task or a subtask, or maybe in a detail will be a video of how to do something. So for my clients last year, one of them implemented something called Donor Perfect. We had to entirely change our process for how they were going to get the details to me from Donor Perfect. We do have an integration, but I also need to know that certain things have been done in it because I'm using a clearing account and it's not always clearing. So then I needed to do a new process for her. I did a video. I sent it to her. She still had a few more questions. So then we had a meeting, but she already had that video so that she knew how to do something. When Marissa first came on with me, I had videos in my workflow. So Marissa is my bookkeeper and my team member. And so I already had videoed all of the work for my clients, partly because I'm solo. I had a contingency partner. If anything happened to me, he would take over he had the lists, but I wanted them more details with videos. Marissa and I replaced those videos with her and I doing them together. And then we added those video links into our task lists or into our projects, if you will. And then there's resource links that need to go in. And so the resource links would be your standard operating processes. Standard operating processes are different from workflows in projects in that they are how your firm operates. And also they would be all of those niggly things that you don't do day to day, but you still need to know about. So it is rare now for, well, it is never now for us to have a uncleared check, like an actual check, like a paycheck, because everything is online for us. We don't have paper checks. But if you do, maybe you don't do that often. I wouldn't put that into a workflow because it's not part of your regular routine. But what I would do is have a link to your SOP that then has in the, it would have an index that you could click on that link and it would take you to how to deal with uncleared paychecks, for example. But it's not really, so that's an SOP. Our SOPs are linked in all of our client files. They're also linked in all of the workflows so that all Marissa needs to do, if she has a question on bad debt, for example, let's say we're going to do bad debt. We've all agreed. I say to Marissa, let's get that bad debt cleared out. She can actually just open the link and then go to the index in our SOP and it says how to clear bad debt. So Davida put in that she's using Loom. We're using Loom. And now what's happened is we have these Loom videos for each other. So Marissa and I will communicate asynchronously. She's a night hawk. I'm a morning person. So she will send me questions. I'll send her thoughts. We changed up another process recently. And so I sent her off a video. But my clients have now, not now, we've been doing it for a while, will send me a video back of something that they need to know how to do or a question that they have or something that's changing in their process. It really becomes a way of living, if you will, once you get used to the videos. I'm going to go back to questions for a second. So Rocio or Rocio, I've noticed that some bookkeepers and accountants only post transactions from the bank feed. Yes, without attaching receipts. I attach every supporting document. It's time consuming. Am I overdoing compliance with the CRA? Okay, so I'm not even sure if I should answer this question. So Canada is quite different than the US. We do need our source documents. If the GST, this isn't going to have a lot of meaning to some of our American friends. If the GST is a known element, I do, and they're not going to have it. So it's Home Depot. It's a construction. They're not going to have every single receipt from Home Depot. If it's under $250, they sign a source documents not reviewed contract. So acknowledging the fallout if they can't produce those receipts that the CRA wants to see. There's all kinds of best practices around that. I am not a babysitter or a micromanager. For starters, if they're consistently not going to get them to me, then we're probably not going to continue. But if there are all of these circumstances, especially a cleanup file where they may never get them, I just have them sign a source documents not reviewed. Dext publishes super fast for me, so publishing them isn't an issue. I sort and filter and then batch click and send everything off and then deal with the ones that are left over that I actually need to look at. But then that publishes over and then that should be matching in the bank fee because my best practice is I've got accounts payable open, accounts receivable so that undeposited funds, everything is clean. I publish as a bill so that it's sitting open in AP. And if it doesn't match in the bank feed, then I know that there's a problem with the actual publishing of it. Boy, I got way in the weeds on there and I apologize on that. So totally up to you. You don't necessarily need to get every document, but I have friends who will not publish or will not clear something from the bank feed or will not close the books until they have everything. So what are the next levels of your workflow? This is where you really start to add the joy. So the communications are going to go in. For me, the communications, there is a task list that then automatically reminds my clients to do things that they can check off as they do it, or they can upload things. I have templated emails that can go out that maybe I'm going to add something to. So I already mentioned my monthly close, especially my weekly one. I do weekly bookkeeping, and the weekly one will go out and it will say, we are all the templated stuff is there. It'd say, we're done your books for the week. And then I added last week a note about tax season being over here in Canada, because I deal with accounting firms. I do the books for accounting firms. So I added that little note. And then I added in, there were some problems with a few things along the line. I added in those little notes. They're not really big woes or big wins. They're just little notes. The month end one is the one that is more substantial. And then there are the automated emails. So when I complete a task, an automated email goes out. Those are the emails I don't need to change anything to. So for example, on my re-engagement, once we have made our way through the re-engagement, I check off the lists that were done, and an automated email goes out thanking my client for continuing to have us a business partner of theirs. So that brings joy to my workday, because not only am I not pecking them out constantly, they're often being deployed automatically for me. And I have the ability to customize them in the beginning to be calm waters of voice. Discovery forms bring great joy to me, because I really get to save myself and prospect time. If they aren't going to be a fit, that is apparent in the discovery form. And I had somebody, this was 2 years ago or so, but it was really telling for me. He filled out the discovery form. He was not willing to have his bank feeds connected, and he was not willing to pay our base fee. But he was super nice about it. So he answered, no, we're not going to have a meeting. He sent me back a note, and he said he loved the process, but he had security concerns around the bank feeds and was too small to pay my fees. He said, but I am going to refer people to you, because that was a beautiful process using that discovery form. And then he did. So saying no can be a win, but having technology and processes and workflows that says no for you is actually bringing joy into your day. Information gathering forms, so those can be deployed, contracts and engagements, and educational videos. On the educational videos, you don't have to create them all, although Veronica has a ton. You can get some from her. Financial Sense has a ton on how to use Financial Sense. But the other place that I get them for, I have a client onboarding guidebook that walks them through the whole process of how we're going to communicate, what security looks like, what our app stack is, all of that kind of stuff. And then at the end, there is a whole section on using the apps. We do an education session, and also the reports section for me, I actually put in the links to things that Intuit had created, that Dext had created, that HubDoc creates. I also use a payment platform called Pluto. It had links. I didn't build it. All I did was link in someone else's videos, because I didn't feel the need to reinvent that. If you are game and you want them to be custom and you want them to be branded, then of course you're going to do your own. But don't hesitate to use the resources that already exist. And then utilizing the app efficiency features. So of course there's automation. So I use automation in sending out some emails. I use it for client reminders. I also use Zapier. So I tie Zapier from my type form back into Financial Sense to create a contact. And then if it's a file review, to create my file review process. Dependencies. This is really important in automation. So dependencies, you can't do the third task if the first two tasks haven't been done. This is also a really nice stopgap measure for automation. So You can't send out the month-end close email if it's automated unless you have actually done the review. It just won't let you because of dependencies. So that's a nice guardrail on automation. Also on time wasting, which brings joy back, right? You're not going to waste your time doing a task if the things you need to complete it haven't been done ahead of time. Recurring schedules, especially if you can customize them. One of the things I like about my recurring schedules is that I customize them so they start on the first Monday of the month. They don't start on the first of the month because that may fall on a weekend. And I don't want anybody getting a notification on a weekend. Tags are great for filtering, for sorting, for imparting information in one visual cue. And then task assignments are some other app efficiency features. So who can you assign the task to? Is it going to be a client? Is it going to be a team member? Is it going to be anybody but you? So task assignments are important. But a word on automation. Automation built on a lousy system accelerates lousy outcomes. So build the system first, then automate it, then test the heck out of everything and weigh the automation win versus the automation fail. And let's do a little quick matrix on this. So are you confident enough in the process that you can delegate it to someone, especially a junior, let's say, without concern for the outcome? So anybody could do this task that you want done or send this communication. Anybody could do it. You can delegate it without worry. Is it repeatable? Every outcome is the same. Every process is the same. I say this because that's important in automation. It's also important in deciding what automation to build. You don't want to build automation for something that you're only going to do occasionally and may have some variable. You will waste more time building an automation and possibly fixing it than you will just doing the darn task properly. And I said, does the automation benefit outweigh the fail? And is it a security issue? Will it be embarrassing? And will it be time consuming? So now we're coming down to the end run. I'm going to take a quick look into the questions. Oh, you're welcome. So I got to thank you. Decide what checklists to create. I know we're going to create checklists for checklists. So what are your biggest missteps? These are the things I would build for first. The biggest missteps. What are the things that are really sucking the joy out of your day, if you will? What is your most inconsistent work? What do you find yourself not doing the same time over time when it should be done the same time over time? Do you have missed deadlines? Do you need to create a process to get those deadlines into order? And so that may include the clients not getting you the information that you need. So what can you do to mitigate that? And could that be that it goes into sub-accounts or whatever the case may be? And then you use recategorization applications for it. So what is the work that you do least often? I created my re-engagement process. Quite a bit of it is automated because I'm only doing it once a year for my clients, and I don't have a giant client load. So although I could just go into Typeform and send out the Typeform itself, I don't do it very often, and I may not access it properly. The other one was I do it quarterly. Some people just do it annually, making sure that your general ledger matches the balance sheet, matches the bank statements, and the reconciliation. So this covers the work done least often. You could forget how to do it. It is somewhat of a complicated process because you need to open up a number of reports, and then you need to have a number of documents in front of you. And there are quite a few steps to make sure that that GL matches. And then you need to know how to correct it. This is the part that I always forget, but I have a list in there of the possible gremlins that could be causing that. And so least often done, complicated processes, processes with many steps. Build if there are multiple communications. This was true of my re-engagement process. There are a number of touch points in that. That workflow is practically all communications that go out. And the other one is, are there several stakeholders? This may be true of partnerships. This may be true if you have a number of team members that do specialized things. So maybe someone publishes, someone clears the bank feed, and someone does the file review. So if there's several stakeholders, in my case, one of my clients has a number of admin staff that do things, and the owners do a couple of things. So with all of those stakeholders, we really need a tight client list, task list for them. So start with the end in mind. Create milestones first. Don't complicate the process. Add the elements as you go, and make a list of the lists you need to create. Financial Sense would love if you set up a demo directly with them so that they can introduce you to the software. So feel free to do that. I'm just going to unshare my screen for a second. And I am happy to take any more questions that you, we're going to do a poll. David, I think you're going to put up a poll for the FC demo, right?
Yeah, I believe it is going to be launched right now. Thank you so much for teaching everyone how to focus on what checklists need to be created. So put your responses in there, and I'll let you know when we're going to wrap up the poll.
Okay. In the meantime, if you liked what you learned today, Financial Sense is launching a video workflow academy hosted by me. So it's a series of videos that you can go through just to try and get your workflows in order. It is not in the weeds of every single workflow you're going to create like Veronica does. It is an overall how to get started and get comfortable in building workflows. So, I got one more question here. Oh, you're welcome. So Lucille says, thank you. You're welcome, Lucille. Thank you for coming.
Kellie, that's so good. And what you brought up is just was so helpful, because a lot of the people in the 5-minute bookkeeping community and some of my students get very overwhelmed with their workflows, because when I ask them, what is the most important thing you need to do for your business, they'll say, well, I need to systematize my entire business. But that's such a huge undertaking. You have to start with, like you said, the biggest missteps, the things that you don't do on a regular basis. Maybe even let's systematize our client onboarding, and then take something else, and know that it could take a couple of years even. I mean, it did for me. So to have realistic expectations as well.
Well, and I think I talked about that remediation file, and we got 3 minutes, so I guess we can keep going a little here. The remediation file took me forever to build, and it will never be done. So like, who knew I needed to, so in one that I did recently, it was maybe 6 months ago, I could not get the GL to balance out to the balance sheet, no matter what I did. It was super frustrating. So as it turns out, an accountant had knowledge of this client that I didn't. And that was that in the past, so this was their tax accountant, that she reconciled in the register, but would also, so she would just randomly reconcile transactions in the register for no reason. So I put that now as part of my remediation before I start any reconciliations, so I had to undo the reconciliations so that I could redo them all, right? Which the reconciliations were perfect. So it wasn't a big thing, but it was 3 years and there was a number of accounts. So I didn't want to, but I had to find those ones to reconcile everything clean, right? I was away to the races. I now learned, and it's a task in my file review, check the register for reconciled transactions that are outside of reconciliation dates. So that's a task. You'll always be iterating. But had I stopped and said, okay, well, I can't build a remediation workflow until I know everything that goes into it. No, I had the milestones to gather the documents and to check for billable items and to, all the non-posting transactions and all the housekeeping. And then I wound up adding all of these other things. It took me years to build that one out.
Yeah. And that's another thing. The reality is once you build out workflows, even if you're using an app like Financial Sense or others, that you have to keep carrying and feeding those workflows because they evolve, apps change, we change. And so it's something you have to commit to for the long term.
So I call it, I was saying it's always be iterating. I just like you said, care and feeding, always be iterating. So yeah, it's important.
Absolutely. Well, we don't have any other questions, so I think we will go ahead and wrap it up unless I think was there anything else we needed to cover?
I
Okay.
think so. Okay, and
All
I
right.
look forward to seeing you in a month, I guess, from now or so, and anybody else who's going to be there. If you see, Veronica, I think you feel the same sometimes. Do you get a bit of I call it the stun bunny or deer in the headlights when I'm at a conference? And I know I should know somebody, but as soon as they tell me their name or why I know them, do you find that too? That you're like, oh, and I just feel like such a
Yeah.
ding dong. So it'd be great. Anybody who's in here, come up to me and say, hey, I was part of
Yes.
Veronica's, right?
Yes, come
Yeah.
up to me too, because some people, they're shy or they think
Yeah.
you're too busy. And then if I've met you and then reintroduce myself to you again at conference, forgive me because I meet a lot of people at
Right.
conference.
Have grace. But yeah, I think you're like me. I actually really like to see people and have them come up and tell me their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just forget the names usually, but
Oh
always
yeah.
happy to do that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you to Financial Sense for bringing this very powerful content to us and really helping our community with setting up workflows, really having realistic expectations of how to set up workflows, and then being able to prioritize your workflows as well. And thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.